Good evening, everybody. Major Dodo here with another assembly guide for Kingdom Death Monster, and tonight we are going to be looking at the Twilight Pinup, which is this model here. I'll show you guys. So she is a Easter promotional model that I picked up some time back. Now she comes with the standard base insert, but we're not going to need that. I just have it here for illustrative purposes, and we will not be gluing it to the bottom base, but I will show you quickly for those of you unfamiliar with Kingdom Death. These will go in together once we clean it up. It does seem to sit, I think it might sit a little bit shallow, so we may have to build it up when we actually come time to glue it in, but we'll cross that bridge when it gets here. But apart from that, we'll get started. Now the first part, as always, is cleaning up the models. You'll notice lots of rough areas. In fact, I will zoom in so that you may get a better picture. But you can see areas on where it's come out of the sprue. Now this is a resin model, which means we won't be using plastic glue, we'll be using super glue. Now I have two that I normally use. This is my preferred for most work. It's a Loctite super glue. Now this is a rubber something in it. It comes out more like a gel rather than this, which will come out more like a thin liquid. Now this is normally what I use for basing and for models that I'm going to snap off later. I just thought I'd bring that and show you in case we do use it. I'm not sure if we will. As for general assembly, this is what I go with. Now it is a little bit more expensive, but I find that it gives a much stronger bond, which means your models are less likely to fall apart. Now the other thing is, as this is a resin model, I have given it a warm soapy bath, just a little bit of soap in some warm water, and a scrub carefully with a old toothbrush to get any last residue from the release process. Think of it as grease in a tray when you're baking. It's the same thing with miniatures. It's not normally a problem you'll run across with plastic miniatures, but resins and metals, definitely you want to give them a quick scrub, make sure they're all nice and clean. Now I'm going to start off by snipping off the parts from the sprue carefully. Yep, this looks fine. We'll remove this peg, since obviously she doesn't have a peg coming out of the bottom of her leg. There will be a small amount of repair work. I noticed on this ghost that this bit broke, so we'll be putting a small dab of super glue in there, which will hold that in place later, and we'll put a little bit of green stuff and blend it in, and yeah, no one will be the wiser. This is the lantern. I'm not even sure whether we'll attach this tonight or whether we'll leave it until during the painting process and leave it as a sub-assembly. And that's because it curls around the model like this and may obscure painting areas that we want to get at, just make it harder to work with. The other hand though is that it attaches to this arm here. She's holding up by the ears, so depending on how well that fits together, we'll see. Because if I have to green stuff that as well, it'll make things a little bit trickier, but I do think we'll still leave this separately. As I do have some white brush on primer for situations like this. I'm using the Res surface primer. Now normally I'll spray prime most miniatures with a rattle can, just because I don't tend to use an airbrush. If you do have an airbrush, of course, spray prime is certainly a lot cheaper. In which case you're probably using something similar to the Res anyway. That is currently my primer of choice for brush on priming, and it's a lot of people's choice for airbrush priming, which is what it's originally intended. But as with pretty much everything to do with airbrushes, if it goes through an airbrush, you can use it to brush. Obviously you're probably not going to want to use some of the cleaning fluids and stuff with your brushes, but you know, common sense there. So we're just gonna get these off. Probably could have used a knife for that, would have been a little bit safer. Now these last two pieces are the ears, which go on the pinup herself. Now I will be painting this pinup on my stream. We're looking at having a Kingdom Death Monday or a Monster Monday of some kind. So do follow the links if you want to see that. We recently finished off a Gladiator, And I think this might be our Monday miniature. I'm not sure. We'll see how we go. Alright, so we've removed these bits. Not much use for them. You can keep them. It may sound weird, but you know, the terrain builders amongst you will always attest to you can make terrain out of the most random things. Me though, I'm going to throw these out. The Forge World ones I find have a thick kind of triangular shape, which would make them great for concrete barriers if you can get a set that are around the same height. So I've actually got a few of those stockpiled, but these thin ones I don't have much use for. Alright, so I guess we'll start with the core part of the model, and that is her. Now the first thing you're going to want to do is carefully check over, and you want to feel out the shape of the model. This is to see, it helps to work out what's flash and what might be intentional. In this case there's not a lot, and in fact the mold is pretty good. I saw very little in terms of mold lines. There's just a small one on her butt here, which we're going to clean up. Now you want to be careful, as the more you shave away on joins, the less smoothly it's going to join up. So you want to be very careful, especially with rounded areas like this. Well, it's a butt, and on a Kingdom Death model that means it's a focus point, right? So you want to be very careful. You don't want to flatten that out into a flat butt. Alright. Now I'm using a knife for this. You can of course use the tools of your choice. I do have abrasive paper that I tend to keep on hand. However, I don't believe I will need that for tonight. I just want to get, now there's this little bit right in the join. Just want to get the tip of the knife in and get that out. Now I'm using a fresh blade, especially since I'd been cleaning up some metal miniatures. Always, I think, switch blades, especially if you've been working on metal and you're switching from metal to resin, switch blades. I get mine like 50 cents a blade, so I tend to have a bunch on hand for quite cheap. Now it looks like there is another small mold line going down the center of her head. So again, we're just going to slowly drag this knife down here. See if we can smooth this out. Now this area will be less visible because of the ears, but nonetheless. Another issue is going to be that the standard paint job for this is white. Now white can be quite difficult to paint, but it also does show up any imperfections on the model as well. So you may want to consider doing a different color if you're less confident with your cleanup job. Art is, well, art's in the eye of the beholder, so if you want to have a different style, it's up to you really. I'm sure there's many different paint jobs that look quite good. I was actually thinking of flipping it around and having a black paint job for her hood and stuff, but I think I'll go for stock standard on this case. Now she has this little bit to the back. I haven't figured out what that is yet, so we're gonna probably find that out together. It may just be the straps for her gown. We will see if there's anywhere left over as we work our way. Now as for the rest of the model, if I can avoid dropping it, it looks pretty good. There's no other real mold line. It looks like there's a, no, I thought there was a tiny bubble around her face, but it's not. Now there is some very small amounts of flash in here. Now you don't want to be rough. This is just filmy kind of leakage. It won't need much pressure at all to clean up. Just, you want to get in there with your knife. Sometimes even a stiff brush will get in there. My apologies, it's falling off camera for a second. Just get in there, because if you put too much pressure in, you're going to slice open that hair. You don't want to do that. You just want to get in there. Just kind of wiggle it around a bit, and that should I may actually move this camera up a little bit. Alright, now that's her basically done. So let's have a look at this leg. Now I was worried at first that these imperfections were not deliberate, but they are, well, apparently where stuff sits. So don't panic, your mold is not horrendously destroyed. I think I did hear tales of people requesting refunds and such, reporting and thinking that their model was incorrectly casted, but no, that's apparently the norm. Now, of course, you can patch anything up like that with liquid green stuff or your epoxy of choice. A little bit of TLC. Now there's a small mold line that's going up here following where this knife line is, so we're going to very carefully shave that down, clean that up. Being careful to smooth everything out so it's not just a one flat area. And then we're going to look on the back of a thigh and very lightly scrape. Just smooth out this mold line. Can be a little bit awkward to hold pieces like this, but just take your time, be careful, and you'll get there. It's also, I don't have a lot of pressure on these pieces since obviously I don't want to break anything off. Now we'll look at the front. The front is actually pretty good. It's just at the back we've had that little bit of a mold line. Now we may have to go back. In fact, I'm looking at it and it's hard to see on camera, but there is some imperfections here that I'm thinking I may even have to get the sandpaper out, or the abrasive paper. It's not really sandpaper, there's no, since it's considerably finer than sandpaper, it's about 2,000 grits per part. Now, the question is, where did I put it? One moment. Sorry, I was having a bit of a cough. I seem to have misplaced it. It's alright, we'll leave that till later. It's the abrasive paper is essentially, it's a grey paper with a rough texture to it that you use to smooth down surfaces like this. Now you can use a file if you want. I like the abrasive papers, they are quite cheap. From memory, the last set of sheets I bought was about $5 for a packet of quite a lot. So I'll definitely go back and use that on there on later. But it's, you know, it's a very slight difference. I just think it'll show up a bit when I'm painting. Although this is the leg that in the box artwork has a stocking, so we may not see it at all really. Once it's painted, it'll look like a stocking seam. Now this leg fits into this join. It's pretty simple. It's going to be easy to line up. So I'm going to glue this now since it can sit there. You can see it's quite an awkward pose. I don't know what they were thinking, but oh well. I'm not the artist. So we're going to, I'm just going to scratch the glue off the top of this from last time I was using it. So this is the stuff that I was talking about. Now you'll see it'll come out as a gel, which means you want to be kind of less is more with this. It will spread and go somewhat towards filling any gaps. So you don't want to put too much because it'll get everywhere and you'll be stuck cleaning up. Alright. Now we're just gonna got a little bit on her head, so I'm gonna have to smooth that down later. Otherwise, it was reasonably good. Oops. Now there is a small gap. You can smell a little gap there. We will smooth that down, and we'll put a little bit of liquid green stuff in there that'll seal that up, and it'll make it look schmick. So I'm just gonna smooth down this where I accidentally got some super glue on her head. Alright, so well that sets properly. I'm gonna have a look at this leg. Now this leg also has some imperfections along the back. There's a small mold line. This looks like there's a slight mold slip. The calf is not too bad. It's mainly visible on the thigh. So I'm just going to do a light scrape along the calf so I think I saw a very slight mold line. The front as well looks pretty good. Now you do want to move it at an angle because sometimes it won't show up until you view it from the correct angle. It's why I'm often finding mold lines, because I just didn't see it at the right angle and it was hidden. Just getting the front of the calf. Now the back here, there's quite a lot actually. There's not a great cast there, but looks like the mold lines are quite small, so it'll be quick and relatively painless to clean this up. Now I tend to keep a large brush around, and that is for occasions like this. You'll probably have seen me use it on others. This is just a G-dub brush I have spare. I'm just going to go in and quickly. It's nothing special, it's literally just an old, reasonably firm paintbrush, not super firm, because obviously I don't want it scratching and I don't want it breaking anything, but firm enough that it can get in and pick up any of these little areas of resin. Alright, now we look at the bottom of the foot. You can see there is a small round area from where we clipped it off, so we're going to very gently clean that up, bringing the knife across. You don't want to try and cut off big chunks at once. It's more likely to have large areas just hack away. You want to go in and just kind of slice it off like little bits at a time, very gently. Otherwise that's all nice and cleaned up. Let's look at the detail on our foot as to how I'm going to have to paint that later. Now, as always, dry fit, dry fit, dry fit. Never go in straight away with glue. You want to make sure you've got an idea of how everything's supposed to go together. Oh, this is going to be fun. So this doesn't look too bad though. So this will go like this. You match up the curves and then kind of center it. There's no pegs, there's no guide. I think they should have put a guide peg or something here. Seems kind of lazy, but we should be right about in there. Just match up the feet. Yep. So again, we're going to go back, This time we're just going to put a little dot right in the center, as we're going to be going back in with liquid green stuff anyway to tidy up this gap. I can see it now, so there's no point running the danger of getting glue everywhere. Just put this in there too. That was close. It started to set before I could center it. It's quite fast to set, but and then we're just going to have to tidy up these gaps with a little bit of green stuff, but she should sit firm. They really should have guide pegs on that, I think. God, I don't like resins. Some of the models look fantastic, but at the same time, especially with flesh tones and things like that, the skin, trying to get areas nice and perfectly smooth for skin. Obviously, skin in real life is not perfectly smooth, but, you know, thank God Kingdom Death is not real life. Alright, so this will go in here. Put guide pegs on things. I think I can set you. We're only going to want to use a tiny bit of glue for these, I think. Alright. So just do a quick clean up. Check the ears. They are pretty good. They came off pretty clean. It'll just be near the tips of the ears. We're going to want to just kind of smooth out the knife. Let's have a look. There's a small bubble on her arm. That is not a big deal. You can just get a little dab of liquid green stuff or your favorite liquid epoxy of choice, and that will fill it, and then smooth it out with a bit of abrasive paper or a file or a knife. Pretty easy. You'll get that nice and smooth again. Luckily the bubble is on the underside of her arm where the tail from this is going to go past, so you're probably not going to see it. Now there is also a small mold line on the inside crook of her arm. I'm just going to get in there with a knife and clean that off. Now we want to check the back. Back of the arm's not too bad. Good. It's a skinny arm. She's got massive thighs. Jeez. Some of their models have got quite nice, reasonable proportions, and some of them are way out, like these ones. So I'm just going to clean up that. And just use the knife to smooth that down. Let's have a look. Just a little bit of film in here, so you just want to flick the knife in. Sometimes you can even get in with a stiff brush. It'll do much the same thing. You want to be very careful here. When you're trimming thin parts like this, you want to brace it with your thumb, if not both. You don't want to put pressure on the joint itself when you're cutting, because if you do that, you will snap, and we don't want to snap. Now, I'm going to try and get this to a rounded edge, even though real swords tend to have that little, that even when they have a pommel like this, they do tend to have a small bit underneath, depending on the design, depending if it was a screw-on. But we'll try and get this nice and smooth, going sideways a bit so that we can round this off, as we don't want it to be flat at the bottom, because it's supposed to be a nice round pommel, capstone or whatever it is supposed to be called. Alright, now the blade is pretty good. I'm not seeing any major bends. There's a slight, no, it's only the slightest bend. We may heat that later. I think it's right. It's pretty good. And there's no bubbles in the blade. I just blew an ear over there though. Alright, so we have one more ear to do, which doesn't look like flash, and this is supposed to be the ear that okay, so this has, the model shows a rabbit biting onto one of her ears, which is, well, it's whatever the hell this thing is, but there's no clear join for it anywhere. It just kind of is. So oh, that's a hand coming out of its bottom. That's creepy. I don't know how we're gonna do this. Whether it's supposed to. Alright, so that sits there. So it would go in there. That's gonna break like instantly the second you put anything on this. We're gonna have to work out how we're gonna do this. Definitely leaving that off for the painting though. He's a creepy little bastard, isn't it? My apologies. Gotta get back into the rhythm of staying on camera. Just trying to clean this thing up. It's got quite a bit of mold from pegs and things on it. I even get in there with these clips. Just try and need some of the Kotobukiya God clips called the God Hand, for if you want to spend $100 on a pair of clippers. I kid you not, they are hobby clippers in the 3-digit price range. I mean, they are supposed to be the absolute greatest thing to ever hobby with, but I don't think I want to pay 3 digits for a knife. Alright, so the ears are pretty good. The arm is not too bad. You want to be careful, like he's got his legs are actually fingers. These 2 buff arms. He did have quite a large mold line on this shoulder, which I'm just scraping. Scraping down. Alright, so see, I knew it. I looked at this arm from a different angle, and sure enough, dirty big mold line. Which you don't want a dirty big mold line. And the last thing is the base, really. We've got the base and we've got the ghosty bit. So, I'm gonna get these clips. And get as much of that as I can. And then the final part is the ghosty bit. He's going to be pretty easy. have no idea how I'm actually going to paint him. Whether we'll go solid white and we'll shade in the little bits of detail that there are, or whether we'll go for like a smoky blend. We'll see. There are a couple of small air bubbles along here, which we'll need to put a little bit of liquid green stuff in. And then the final part's this little tail, which I think I'm going to put the tiniest bit of the really thin super glue. Just attach. Just want it to like, don't actually want any to, I don't want to leave a dot. I just want to, it might almost be a little bit too much, but that'll do. That'll do, donkey. That'll do. That away. Alright, so that's the cleanup finished. Now we've got to pose her and base her. So she's gonna sit roughly like this on the base. Neither arm either has a peg, although it looks like this is where the oh wow, I was gonna say it looks like this, so this is where the arm sits on these grooves, but also means they're supposed to meet up, and there's like a, oh god, there's this massive gap kind of when it sits, when they meet up. How the hell are you supposed to, wow. So look at this. So this blade sits in these grooves, it's sculpted nicely, and then there's a gap that's gonna have to get filled in. Oh, that's nasty. I have no idea how we're gonna do that. We're probably gonna have to put a little bit of green stuff or something. The alternative is to just pin this in, is to just glue this and then ignore those, basically to ignore the indents altogether. I'm just gonna ignore them, because when it sits there we have that big gap, so we could move it up and then glue basically back with liquid green stuff and fill all of these, which I think is going to be the easier option instead of having to sculpt a slice out of our arm. Jeez. And then this arm, thank God, will just go straight on. But it too will need smoothing. Wow. They couldn't make things easy. So we will put the absolute teeny amount of glue on there. We will attach her arm, trying to line it up straight the first time. The downside is this glue sometimes doesn't leave you very long to maneuver, so you have to be quick and precise. Now we'll go the ears, so that's one ear, that's the other ear. So again, small amounts of glue. I might need to put a little bit more on that one. both of her ears on. Oh god, then finally this bloody arm. We're just going to glue it on. We're going to glue it there, and we're going to put a couple of touches of glue on the sword itself, on the side, on that wrist where it's going to meet there. And then we're going to fill in all of that stuff with liquid grain stuff. I think it's going to be easier to do that than to try and sculpt in the slice of her arm that's missing. Jesus. Yeah. It'll be easier to hide that than hide the rest. God, what? It's so bad. Just going to put a couple of touches of glue. You're not going to see this because this is going to sit obviously on the side where we're cleaning up. Put a little bit there. Try not to get glue everywhere. Now we're just going to want to let it set. We can go back afterwards and clean up around there, the gaps where it's supposed to sit, instead of leaving the massive big slice out of her arm that, God, that just seems like such a big design flaw. The models look great generally. This one though is just kind of, to me, a little bit all over the place. Alright, so she sits on a base like this, and we are going to glue her to a base. Sometimes I'll leave them off, but I don't think it's going to be much of an issue for this one. Which means, again, a little bit of glue on each foot. You can be a little bit more generous here, since I'm probably sure I'm going to cover all the areas between the eggs with some static grass. Make sure she's centered. She can actually be a little off-centered to the left because this will, as I said, this kind of curves around her. Oh, it's fiddly. Put this glue away before we have an accident. So it goes around something like that with the sword resting on it, which is why we're going to leave it off till last. But there you go. The and then there's that bloody little rabbit, which I have no idea what we're going to do with, to be honest, guys. It looks like it's supposed to sit somewhere like here, but I mean, Christ, you'd want to almost shave that down a bit more, because it's just got no surface area to stick. I'll have to have a think about that later, but definitely I would leave that off while I'm painting her, just to make life way easier. There you go, guys, the Twilight Night pinup from Easter. Thank you for watching. I hope you've learnt something, worked out some of the instructions. It doesn't come with instructions, as I said, but hopefully you'll see some of the problems you can run into, how to resolve them. Yeah, learn by my mistake, not so much by using me as the perfect guide. Yes, thank you very much for watching. If you do find this informative, please check out the Facebook and Twitch links, and the Patreon link, obviously, when this goes up onto YouTube. I will put a list of materials used in the video description. And yeah, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.